now we have another week in Azerbaijan. I'm Dr. Joanne Lisosky, and I am an academic and a journalist, and also an author of a book about protection of journalists in conflict. And with me today is Gültekin Hacıbeyli from the National Council of Democratic Forces, Arif Shakmarli, former Azerbaijani ambassador to the COE and the EU, and Alex Rafoglu. I never pronounce your name right, Alex, so please forgive me. And I want to wish you all a happy Democracy Day as we get going and talking about what's happening these days in Azerbaijan. Of course, we need to start with an update on Tofiq Yaqublu. Day 15 of his hunger strike. You'll remember that he was sentenced to more than 4 years in prison for hooliganism, which has been called by the international community as a trumped-up charge. But now he has been taken to the hospital. Is going to the hospital a good thing? Anyone?
May I start?
Sure, please, Arif.
Okay. Of course, taking him to the hospital is a good thing if there are independent monitors, if the family members can control the process, if the lawyer can be allowed to meet him, but nothing of this is done. So we know that after the visit of the doctor, Professor, he was requested just to be injected some, reinforcing injection so that he can, survive for longer time his hunger. And after that, we heard that the doctor says that, yes, he's very weak. It is a longer, hunger over 13 days. That time it was 13 days. And of course, he needs some injection so that, to give him necessary ingredients so that he can stay longer. And he said also what worried us a little bit, that because of the hunger strike, his mental health can be damaged, and we can lose him as a social person. Probably the first who noticed this was Alex. He started to ring the bell with Sevinç, saying that why, because of hunger, his mental state can suffer, and we can lose him as a social person, and only get him as a biological entity. Then, following Alex and Sevinç, I also started to doubt it about this, because even on the second day of hunger strike, penitentiary authorities said that they want to force Yaqublu to pass psychological examination, because his hunger strike might be linked to his mental changes, and we know.
I read something about that he was under pressure to confess that he had some kind of psychological disorder. Absolutely. Is that a routine strategy in these cases? It sounds like an old Soviet strategy.
Yeah, absolutely. We know how these things are done. And of course, when penitentiary system authorities say that we might force him to pass a psychological test, and immediately after that, the doctor says that it is a long hunger strike, and he can lose his mental capacity. this made us a little bit worried, because why? Anything can happen. His heart may stop, his liver or any other thing. But why they make accent on his mental capacity? Because we have seen in the past examples when just almost 1 year ago, in October 2019, Oktay Gulaliyev was hit by the car. Then he was taken to the hospital, and at the hospital, he was operated. Even after the accident, he was capable. He was talking with the family. There was not any problem with his communication, but he was operated, and after 1 year of stay in the hospital, he remains incapable. His brain is not functioning. He was in coma for a long time, and what he can do, only he can move his finger or open the eye. And we don't want the same happen to Yaqublu.
So it sounds like a regular pattern that
absolutely.
They are using to quiet the opposition. Starts with a car accident. It starts with a car accident, turns into a hospital stay. Hospital stay turns into mental capacity diminished.
Yeah, absolutely. And we see the same pattern. Also, Yaqublu, he's on hunger strike, but he's on hunger strike. Why? Because he was, blackmailed. And they wanted to give him, and they gave him 4 years and 3 months of imprisonment for the person who has been put in prison before twice, and now the third time they want to keep him in prison for the third time for the period of over 4 years.
And now, Alex, you said that it's the same doctor and the same hospital as well, right? That he's been taken to.
Obviously, we don't want to make it, personal, but as we say also in English, also we have this similar phrase that if there's a quack, there's a duck. Tofiq Yaqublu is in jail, and actually even the fact that government acknowledges that he has preconditions and he should be hospitalized, it should raise a flag that, okay, if you know that there's a humanitarian reason for him to get out of jail, what do we want? What is he asking for? Just send him home. The only the problem that we have right now is about messaging. So we hear different messaging coming from the hospital and from the government, and also Tofiq himself, was able to send out clear message that I am here, either I'll go out of this jail or I'll die here. So our point was just send him home, let him eat food at home. That's the only clear message he has. If that's the one causing any concern about his health conditions, which is absolutely understandable because he's not a young man. I mean, given his age, also his backstory, he suffers a lot of problems because of, thanks to the government's crackdown, thanks to his previous arrests. That's fine. So he should be released and released only. There is no other way. Tofiq left us 2 options, either this or freedom. That means he gave us one option. There is no other option.
So what exactly does he want? What specifically does he want?
There's a history of government arresting all the civil society activists and opposition leaders with flimsy charges. So, and Tofiq wants to put an end to it. His message is enough. We should stop it, and enough is enough. Now I need to get out, and I need to set this precedent. And anything beyond that is just diverting the attention from actual problem. The actual problem is he should not be in jail for a single hour.
So he has specific things that he has asked for himself and for other political prisoners. Yes?
Correct.
Okay.
Gudakin?
Thank you very much for this question. I think that it's very crucial and key question. And if we immerse deeper into the essence of his struggle, we should underline that this is not struggle for himself. This is not struggle for the release of Tofiq Yaqublu, who is convicted on politically motivated charges, on absolutely biased judges, on absolutely trumped up and fabricated judges. His struggle is much higher. His struggle is much more important, not only for the Azerbaijani society, but for the history of democracy in the world and in the region. What does Tofiq Yaqublu want? Why? You know, Tofiq Yaqublu is a very responsible and very serious person, and he performs all his actions, all his steps consciously. And what's the true reason of his fasting for more than a fortnight, for about 2 weeks? Tofiq Yaqublu want to stop the continuously rotating conveyor of creation of political prisoners in Azerbaijan, because he is fed up of this experience, because Azerbaijani society, Azerbaijani political circles are fed up with this reality that Azerbaijani government is using political prisoners as the means of trade in international negotiations with international organizations, with the countries like the United States or with the European Union. And you know, it's routinely, it's concurrently and continuously continuing a process, and it's a rotating conveyor. And this conveyor is working, is rolling for many years, for many decades even. And Tofiq Yaqublu by sacrificing his life, by sacrificing his health, he wants to put an end to these atrocities, to these cruelties, to this brutality, when people are charged only for being political activists, when people are imprisoned only for expressing their political views, when people, innocent people, are punished only for belonging to political parties and criticizing Azerbaijani president and government. He wants to stop this practice, and that's why he repeatedly said that the government has two choices, and the first choice, Tofiq Yaqublu is dying, and the government should be ready to meet the consequences of this death. This is also a very difficult choice for the Azerbaijani government, because we are, in this case, we should talk about the application of very tough sanctions on Azerbaijan, targeted sanctions on the Azerbaijani government. But according to Tofiq Yaqublu, according to his struggle, we have the second choice, when he very clearly and explicitly declared that I must be the last political prisoner in Azerbaijan. If Tofiq Yaqublu is released, he states that he must be the last political prisoner in Azerbaijan, and the process of his release will be the beginning, should be the beginning of another process of putting an end to the circulation of political prisoner, the routine in Azerbaijan. And that's why it's very stunning, the upheaval. It's very it's very important step undertaken by Tofiq Yaqublu, and his fasting, and that's why I would like to emphasize that he is fasting, he's on a hunger strike, not only for himself. Of course, he's struggling also. He wants all charges, all the bias charges, all the trumped up charges, fabricated charges, the bogus charges against him to be quashed, to be immediately dropped. But he also has the second require from the government to put an end to this practice of using political prisoners as a leverage as a political means for of pressure on international organizations, on other countries with whom the Azerbaijani government is negotiating. That's why.
So that's why I have a question about the Council of Europe, Arif. Where are they preparing to step in at this time? Where there is talk that the Council of Europe is going to be the savior of Tofiq Yaqublu? Is that possible? Do we have any idea that this might be happening?
In fact, the rapporteurs for political rapporteurs on Azerbaijan, also for political prisoners, Ms. Suna and others, they made statement on Tofiq Yaqublu arrest and his hunger strike. We believe that at the session there might be some resolution. We don't know yet if there is something on the table, but of course we send all information about the developments with Tofiq Yaqublu to the Council of Europe, to the rapporteurs. On social media, there are lots of tweets with Free Tofiq Yaqublu, and I think that these tweets are seen by our friends all over the world and in the international organizations. But you know, I, as a person who worked for a long time in the Council of Europe, I have to acknowledge that the Council of Europe is quite weak organization. It is very much weakened by countries like Azerbaijan, Russia, and others. There were Cairo diplomacy, which was a big scandal, and many European officials were involved in Cairo diplomacy. So I don't have lots of hopes with the Council of Europe. It is very weak. There are dirty lobbying, despite this Cairo diplomacy was uncovered. Still, the old practices exist within the walls of this organization, and also much depends on the member states. We need a big push from big countries like United Kingdom, France, Germany, without, like Poland, of course, without big push from member states, Secretariat cannot do much, even if they want to. Also, Azerbaijani regime continues this practice of buying and lobbying, dirty lobbying. We have seen also they went so far as also lobbying through the media. Probably you have heard about Washington Times article. Yeah, this is so they try to clear their image. They try to do something. They order organize some lobbied articles and politicians. So frankly speaking, I don't expect much from the Council of Europe. Government, Azerbaijani regime afraid only two countries or two entities. This is US Congress, which can impose Magnitsky Act, or European Parliament. We see in the European Parliament, Ms. Santos said that a European Parliament might pass a resolution on Azerbaijan. So my personal hopes are with the US Congress. There is already a draft resolution submitted by Christopher Smith, which exists, which was blocked by the State Department, I believe by the Minister of Defense and the State Department, but it exists so that if there is a green light, there is no need for the new resolution. They can just, give the green light to the resolution, which is draft resolution, which already exists, and it is done. And that resolution, and this existing resolution, draft resolution, is quite good, and there are all elements, all pressure measures. And even if the talks about turning or reviving this or starting to think about resolution. If US senators would say that we should rethink about that, would stop Azerbaijani regime from making further stupid acts.
Thank you, Arif. That is so illuminating. Thank you for that. That's such good information that all the U.S. Congress has to do is have a draft resolution that says they are thinking about this. They don't even have to be concerned, or they don't have to condemn. We are looking at this.
Yeah.
This is amazing.
This is more important than 5 Parliamentary Assembly Council of Europe resolutions. Believe me. I'm sure that most of my friends would agree with this opinion.
So if you are a member of the U.S. Congress and you're watching this right now, please think about what's happening in Azerbaijan. That's one request. Write down and send a memo that you are thinking about this. That is what would be very helpful to us. And I have a question for you too, Alex. The Amnesty International is calling Yaqublu a person of. They have a label for it, and I can't. What? I've lost my note.
Prisoner of conscience.
Prisoner of conscience. Thank you, Gültekin. So what does that mean, a prisoner of conscience?
Yes, Yaqublu Tofiq is obviously not the first prisoner of conscience from Azerbaijan, but there's a litany of actions by this regime against that single individual. So there's a history of arresting him with bogus charges, and in last 7 years he got arrested for 3 times. So Amnesty went through all of the documents related to his case, and the compelling reasons that all of those charges were political, and he is there just purely because he was trying to take advantage of the Constitution, the rights that were given to him by the Constitution to exercise his freedom of expression, and because of that pure violation that he is subject to, so he is, by Amnesty's definition, he's a prisoner of conscience.
Now, is there any power? Does Amnesty International have any power?
We can name and shame, obviously. So
name and shame, right?
Is a powerful tool, but we don't have many other tools in our toolkit. But we do work with separate governments, including the U.S. government, and trying to knock the right doors and try to
Mm-hmm.
as you mentioned, approach senators and remind them of the values that they were supposed to stand up for. We kept hearing that American government and other governments, they had a very tough choice between American values and their interests in Azerbaijan. But there's a new narrative that I keep hearing lately, particularly. They keep adding one more reasoning, but not speaking up lately, is about the gravities of Azerbaijan, the gravities of the region. Which is something that we need to sit down and discuss it, and this is significant. This is staggering, when it comes to Azerbaijani gravity. Whatever is going on in Azerbaijan right now is not different than what we see in Venezuela, when we see in countries such as Belarus. And Aliyev genuinely believes that by diverting the attention from Tofiq Yaqublu right now, by torturing this decent man in jail, so he is controlling the situation in his country. So did Lukashenko, so did Maduro, so did others believe in that.
So once the whole idea of Azerbaijan's leadership moving into that category of gravely violating freedom and democracy, it's a move into that category that may make them change. I mean, may cause changes in this. Is that possible?
It's right now. It's all about preventing them from succeeding in dismantling, the opposition and democratic institutions in the country. Because once they get dismantled, we see Gültekin Hanım here, representing the umbrella organization, the major opposition group. Once they all get dismantled, one government successfully brings them in their knees, it will be too late to protect them, to help them. That's why we need to stand up right now to move forward before Aliyev, succeeds in his plan. That he actually clearly, just announced it in March publicly.
Arif, I have a question about, and maybe thank you, Alex. Maybe Gudikun can speak to this too. Mm-hmm. But something that I see that the world is seeing in the U.S. is a great deal of public opposition and protests. And why are we not seeing, or are we seeing, and we just haven't been told about it, why are we not seeing more public opposition? I know that there have been some protests where a few people have been detained. And this is very curious to me, why there aren't people in the street with placards and signs. And
let me a little bit disagree with you, taking into account that we have more than 200 political prisoners now. You can imagine the situation in Azerbaijan. And you asked Alex question about prisoners of conscience. I would like just to explain you a small difference between political prisoners and prisoners of conscience. Political prisoners are those people who committed some crimes. For example, a person is committing crime which deserves 5 years in incarceration. But when he is incarcerated for 10 years, he is called political prisoner because his term is tougher than he deserved. But prisoner of conscience is the person who commits no crime. It's absolutely innocent person, who is arrested, who is detained, arrested, and convicted only on politically motivated, absolutely baseless, unfounded, and spurious charges. This is prisoners of conscience. And here in Azerbaijan, overwhelming majority of those people whom we call political prisoners are indeed prisoners of conscience, because they are detained, they are arrested, and they are punished only for exercising their rights and freedoms fixed in Azerbaijani constitution, expressed in the European Court, the European Convention on Human Rights. Absolutely innocent people are punished in Azerbaijan for expressing their political views, ideas, and so. And of course, we think why the situation is so disastrous in Azerbaijan, because the Azerbaijani authorities, Azerbaijani regime is very ruthless, is very brutal, and it's torturing people, and it's forcing the political prisoners to testify against themselves, to testify against their party leaders, and to give the incriminatory statements against themselves. And the torture is widespread practice in Azerbaijan. Under such circumstances, in this condition, it's very difficult to struggle. It's very difficult to be a political activist, to be a pro-democracy advocate, and to be political rival of President of Aliyev. And what should we do? You asked Arif question about the United States senators, and I would like just to address, to appeal to them, if any of them watching us. I would like just to say that the tortures and inhuman behavior that's taking place in Azerbaijani prisons, in Azerbaijani places of detention, these are human tragedies. And it's also up to the United States, the senators, the United States, the politicians, to contribute to stopping this the practice. And the only way to stop this practice, the only way to stop the impunity taking place in Azerbaijan, the only way to stop the atrocities occurring in Azerbaijan is imposition sanctions on Azerbaijani regime. Without doing that, without they prolonging this process, the politicians throughout the world, first of all, politicians in the European Union and the United States, they, to some extent, they share responsibility of this, the brutality taking place in Azerbaijan. They share responsibility for impunity, what we have, and lawlessness, what we have here in Azerbaijan. That's why it's up to them to stop. You know, we are Azerbaijan opposition. We are disabled. We are incapacitated to do that, to stop this process. But the people in the United States can do that. They are quite powerful to do that. They are quite forceful to stop Azerbaijani authorities to torture people, to extract from them the incriminatory testimonies against them and against their party leaders. They can do that, and that's why I would like to appeal to them and ask to understand their responsibility and to hold accountable all those perpetrators of this crime against humanity, to all perpetrators of tortures, to accountability. It's up to them to contribute to the process of bringing them to justice. It's possible to bring them justice. The United States has very serious leverage to pressure on Azerbaijani government to stop at least to stop tortures here in Azerbaijan, at least to release all political prisoners in Azerbaijan, all innocent people who are arrested on politically motivated charges without any reason, without any legal basis, absolutely groundlessly, absolutely baselessly, and on absolutely spurious and bogus the charges. And that's why I would like to ask them not to share the responsibility, this very heavy responsibility, very tough responsibility, but to contribute to this, to the process of stopping this torture and of stopping to atrocities taking place in Azerbaijan.
Thank you, Gültekin. That is a very passionate plea to the U.S. House and Senate and all of the politicians in the U.S. It makes me sad that we don't see more people on the street, but I see that it is very dangerous for anyone to protest. Very much unlike what it is in the United States. It's easy for people to protest and just leave their house.
John, today, just one remark. Today, as a leadership of the National Council, just 10 people, according to quarantine orders, we decided to visit the Martins Alley in the center of Baku. Just, it was not a political action. It was not a rally. We didn't plan to hold any manifestation, any demonstration or a rally. We wanted just to pay tribute to the Martins, Turkish Martins, who sacrificed their lives for the sake of Azerbaijani nation, who perished for the good of Azerbaijan. We wanted just to pay tribute to their memory, and we were stopped. We were forcefully interrupted.
No.
And they removed from that area of Martins Alley. We were dispersed and removed from that area. The head of the chairman of the Popular Front Party, Ali Kerimli, wanted to deliver just 2 or 3 minute speech for paying tribute to the memory of that Martins, but he was interrupted as well. We were forcefully removed from that area. And that area, by the way, is located in 100 meters to Azerbaijani parliament. That happened in front of the Azerbaijani parliament.
It couldn't be a more peaceful way of assembling and honoring the martyrs. than just handing out roses. I see that you're handing out flowers. And that is not acceptable. That's remarkable. Unfortunate that people can't speak or even assemble and talk about their own martyrs. This is very unfortunate. This is heartbreaking.
Yeah, absolutely.
Arif, you have some more comments about this as well.
Yeah,
thank you, Pulikin.
Firstly, on the question about Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch letters. I know from my experience as ambassador, if there are letters to the European Parliament, Council of Europe authorities or Secretary General, letters from Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch, they have to react. They do react. They gather secretariat, they start consultations with member states separately and seeing whether they can do something about that. If someone else writes, probably they might ignore, but they never ignore letters coming from Amnesty or Human Rights Watch. This is the first comment, because I was several times called by the Secretary General saying that, oh, Mr. Ambassador, we have to react. We have the letter from the Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch. When it comes to, I also wanted to talk about, American, values and interests. Of course, United States is a great country and it has interests all over the world, including in Azerbaijan. But probably what is happening in Azerbaijan is very serious risk to U.S. longer-term interest, not only in Azerbaijan, but in the region in general. Because we see that situation is going from bad to worse. Social tension, in the society is growing up. And United States can lose Azerbaijan not for short period of time, but for strategically, because firstly, all this fake news about tension between Aliyev and Putin, between Moscow and Baku, is just for Western ears. They want to create the fake, notion that Aliyev is under pressure from Putin, and don't press him, because if we press him, then Putin will swallow him. It is the game. Believe me, it is a game. What was Lukashenko saying before presidential elections? That in the conversation with the Westerners, he even was making the speeches that, oh, Russia pushing me. They made this fake news about GRU agents like who came to Belarus. It was also well prepared. Dictators want to create the notion that they are under pressure from Moscow. Don't press us, otherwise Russia will break. This is all bullshit. I'm sorry for this expression.
That's okay. That's okay. Everyone knows what that means.
Ilham Aliyev and this regime works directly under Russian instructions, from the military to law enforcement, everywhere. It is 100% controlled. Ilham Aliyev doesn't make anything without consulting with Vladimir Putin. And even our diplomatic corps, when they have the meetings in the State Department, in the Congress, they say that, oh, what Aliyev tries to make the changes. You have to understand, because if he does quicker, Russia will swallow. They try to use this all the time when dictators are in danger. Lukashenko did this Fortunately, it was ignored, apparently. But the fortune of Belarus is that they have neighbors like Poland, Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia. Unfortunately, our neighbors are Iran, Russia, and on the east, Turkmenistan and Central Asian republics. We are not in easy neighborhood. The only country with which we have access to the West is Turkey, but we see situation there is not very good as well, and we see, unfortunately, I have lots of respect towards Turkey and love towards Turkey, but we see today a close cooperation between Turkey, Russia, and İlham Aliyev. So we have to be very careful about fake news, about fake tension, about Russia trying to. No, this is done only to reduce tension from the West, to say that Azerbaijan is important geopolitically. It was also in the European Union. Whenever there was calls to impose sanctions, some commissioners were saying, no, we need Azerbaijan as a partner in this difficult geopolitical area. We need energy security, etc., etc. Please, this regime is a danger not only for Azerbaijani people, it is danger for the Caucasus, because Azerbaijan dictatorship spreads its hands to neighboring states. In Georgia,
for example, to Georgia, yeah.
To Georgia, they corrupted all Georgian government. Sokar company tries to corrupt all Georgian political system. They even hijacked Azerbaijani journalists from the sovereign country. Can you imagine? So the United States should understand that this regime in the longer term damages the Western interests. We see it's not stable. Aliyev is not the person of values. If the person in the power is not the person of values, he will do anything to save his power. If tomorrow Putin says him one thing, he will do one thing. If tomorrow he will need the West to close their eyes to human rights violation, he will do that. But we shouldn't be fooled by these regimes, because Lukashenko tried. Fortunately, he failed thanks to democratic states around country. Unfortunately, West doesn't know our mentalities. Poland knows. All Eastern countries, Lithuania, Latvia, they know. And now they are leading in the European Union, because probably if Poland, Lithuania wouldn't push European Union for tougher stance, Europe wouldn't take the stance that it has taken now. But unfortunately, we cannot ask our neighbor Iran to lobby Azerbaijan or
probably not.
Turkey. Yeah.
Arif, that is so insightful. Thank you. That gives me so much more information about the enemy of my enemy is my friend, right? And that's exactly what they're setting up. Is if they are in conflict, if Russia and Azerbaijan are in conflict, that means we must stay with Azerbaijan and we must allow them to do what they need to do to make their republic work and not interfere, because they are the enemy of my enemy. So they have to be my friend. It's what insight into paying attention to how these conflicts are being trumped up or made up, so that the U.S. government thinks, oh, we must pay attention, we must not interfere because they are our friends. And I want to sort of switch it a little bit and talk about something that Alex has used as a term. When you talk on Twitter, you talk about the pocket opposition. Can you explain a little bit more about the pocket opposition, what you mean by that term, and what people watching from abroad should understand by that term?
Absolutely. So this is about the pocket opposition is a group of, I would say, people that let's say organized by the government, totally, I would say, perfectly designed, let's say, group that green lighted to not only mimic an actual opposition, but also to prevent them from coordinating. This term. Can you see me? Yeah, my apologies. That's a problem because they are so good at mimicking the actual opposition. Those folks I mentioned, they are the last to know that their luster is gone. Yet they would be willing to jump in and take that mission. But that's a powerful, huge plan, like I mentioned earlier, to get rid of the opposition and also to mislead the Western audience that this is our actual opposition. The other ones are radicals, or even lately we heard about Russia angle. They are apparently Azeri opposition. Apparently was pro-Russian, pro-Russian aligned with pro-Russian folks in the government, which is a malarkey, for average Azeris. But they would just easily take that, let's say, fake information, disinformation abroad through a very interesting channel. If you look at how this, this information is traveling, something that me and my friends would call information laundering, to a Western country, just like money laundering. It's not something like different. It's not. There's no creativity.
It's information laundering. Okay.
Exactly. So they take that news, that disinformation from Baku. Again, this information that could deem to be like nonsense by Azerbaijani standards. They could easily take it to Baku, to the Western capitals. Like they would find newspapers such as Washington Times, and they would just launder the money there. That same thing, they would launder the news there, and then they would take it back to Azerbaijan. But that's where the pocket opposition weighs in. That's their mission, to take it back as an independent so-called group. And they are English-speaking people, but as I mentioned, they are the last to know that their luster is gone. But they're willing to take that mission, and that's not Aliyev's project, by the way. Those who closely watch our region, they know that Putin also, used that tactic perfectly well, and Erdogan did the same. Aliyev is still, taken from their textbooks.
Well, and that reminds me of something that I noticed on your Twitter account about something that was in the Washington Times, and I think Arif mentioned it earlier too. There was an op-ed in the Washington Times that Azerbaijan is a wonderful democratic state with political pluralism, and praised by a note from President Trump about their independence. Now, how can that be true, and what you're telling me be true at the same time?
For an average, American, reader, for American audience, this might not mean much. Like I said, they don't really know much about Azerbaijan, but they have two goals. One is to mislead them. Obviously, it's about just giving some let's say validity to whatever their lobbies are doing in this town. If the lobbyist talks about Aliyev's democracy, so-called, and then the same sources that are listening to them, they might open up Washington Times. By the way, those articles are being circulated by lobbyist groups in this town in Washington, D.C. And so that's one goal. And the second goal, if that news, that's so-called, we live in a disinformation, information disorder, age, right? And while our societies back at home and here, they start struggling between, identifying what is fake, what is true. By that time, that news circles back to Azerbaijan and misleads Azeri people. If Washington Times writes this, that means there is some validity to this, absolutely fake news.
Well, if I can, thank you, Alex. If I can take a moment and be an academic and talk about the whole idea that is close to my academic heart, which is the idea of media literacy. And media literacy is what I teach young people in the US on a regular basis, is know who is talking to you and why they are trying to persuade you to think a certain way. And if the Washington Times is being used as a vehicle, I think the people in Azerbaijan, or as a shining example of journalism, the people in Azerbaijan need to be more aware of who owns the Washington Times and where their allegiance actually lies and why they are cozying up to the lobbyists from Azerbaijan. Those are things that don't just believe what you're being told, examine who's telling you and why they're telling you it. The media literacy tenets.
If I may, can I add one more, maybe like detail to watch closely in this case? Those who quote Washington Times never quote Washington Post.
No, right. Well, and it's a vast difference between the Washington Times and the Washington Post. And I can see where people could get them confused. Many people in the United States get them confused. So it is not unusual to confuse the Washington Post and the Washington Times as being the same thing.
That's an interesting caveat, because I did actually have a chance the other day to sit down and go through the social media accounts of every single politician, so-called, quote-unquote, in Azerbaijan and abroad, who, tweeted about Washington Post article, including that pocket opposition I referred to, previously. I went through their social media accounts just a couple of weeks ago, like 3 weeks ago. The Washington Post had a very compelling article about all the ongoing crackdown in Azerbaijan. None of them posted that article. So that's another clear sign.
They know the difference between the Washington Post and the Washington Times.
And as a representative of the most radical opposition, as a representative of Board of National Council, I would like to add something. In this article, we are accused in collusion, in cooperation with the Ramiz Mehdiyev, the former head of presidential apparatus, who served for Aliyev's regime for more than 2 decades, about 3 decades. And we are stigmatized as the most radical opposition. And I would like just to explain you that whom, unfortunately, the Washington Times author and some members of pocket opposition in Azerbaijan call the most radical opposition, colluding with Ramiz Mehdiyev, cooperating with him. We are the forces, the National Council and the member belonging to National Council, the Popular Front Party of Azerbaijan. And you can, there is no single example, no one example for for use of force by representatives of our group. Now, or there is no one call for forceful overthrowing of power, changing or seizing of power. The only way recognized by us, it's a democratic way. It's way of democratic transition from authoritarian government to democratization of society. We are standing for constitutional changes. We are standing only for exceptionally for constitutional, peaceful and democratic changing. We are standing for rule of law. We are standing for free and fair elections. We are standing for independence of courts. We are standing for the economy on the basis of free competition, but not for economy which depends on the oil prices. When oil prices are soaring, our economy is in blossom. When oil prices are slumping, our economy is in tatters. We are standing for real prosperity for Azerbaijan nation, for peaceful changes in our country. And we are the forces who never agitate, who never claim for any other way for struggle, but the peaceful changes. We are stigmatized, we are stamped by the authorities as anti-national forces, as the most radical position, as well as we are stamped and branded by so-called opposition, members of Azerbaijan opposition, but who are indeed pocket opposition. Why they are called pocket opposition? Because they are in the government pockets.
Thank you, Gültekin. I think that's very important for people to understand that radical doesn't mean violent. Radical means freedom. Yes, in this case, absolutely. Radical means careful freedom. I think we probably need to move on, and I appreciate all of you so much. I have learned so much. Will continue to ask for the U.S. people who are watching to make sure that they pay attention and think about what is happening in Azerbaijan, because apparently that is incredibly powerful. We will all keep our eyes and ears fixed to the progress of Tofiq Yaqublu and think about him and make sure that we are thinking good thoughts for him and remember his saying, which is freedom or death. No pardon, no relief, no dropping charges, only full exoneration. And this is a serious reminder to the whole world that what we often say, freedom is not free.
Thank you, and happy International Democracy Day.
Thank you, and happy Democracy Day.
Thank you.